Welcome to Heian Haven. I'm Dawn. Today we're discussing Chapter 26 of the Tale of Genji, Tokonatsu, Wild Pinks. We'll start with our usual summary for shared context. It was a very hot day. Genji, his son, Tonochujo's sons, and other courtiers gathered at the fishing pavilion of the Rokujo estate where they grilled fish and enjoyed wine and chilled rice gruel in an attempt to stay cool. Genji asks for gossip and is told of the Omi lady. He jokes that his son could take her as a lover. Genji and Tonochujo's relationship, though on the surface friendly, had grown quite tense. Genji is still annoyed with Tonochujo's keeping his son and Kimono apart. Genji realizes that given the evidence of the Omi daughter, Tamakazura would not be taken lightly should he present her to her father. He made his way over to her quarters, courtiers in tow, and encouraged Tamakazura to give them a glimpse of her. They eventually leave disappointed. Genji and Tamakazura discuss his son's relationship with Kimono and how well her father plays the Japanese koto, being the best at court. Tamakazura wants to learn from him, but doesn't know if she will have the opportunity. Genji reminisces about that rainy night Tonochujo told him about Tamakazura, and they exchange poems. Genji, his longing ever increasing, contemplates Tamakazura's future, keeping her for himself or giving her to one of her suitors, but keeping her at the Rokujo estate and sneaking in to finally have his way with her once she is married and knows something of sexual relationships. He visits her with the pretext of giving her koto lessons. Tonochujo has heard that his Omi daughter was being relentlessly criticized as a complete idiot. He discussed the rumors with Kobai and learned that Genji had asked about her. He feels that while Genji has kind words for everyone else, his family alone is criticized. They discuss Tamakazura, whom Tonochujo dismisses as some peasant girl. He then disparages Genji, obviously still upset over Kimono. Tonochujo decides to visit Kimono and finds her napping. He warns her to be more vigilant. Kimono refuses to visit her grandmother for fear of what may happen in such a lax environment. He then visits his daughter, the consort, and arranges for her to take the Omi lady into her service. Tonochujo continues on to see his Omi daughter, finding her with her blinds pushed out so far anyone could see her. She is excitedly and loudly playing backgammon with a servant, Gosechi. She is coarse and unrefined and speaks at breakneck speed in a high-pitched voice. Tonochujo admonishes her to speak more softly. She fails. He advises her to go see her sister, the consort, that evening. The Omi lady sends the consort a letter filled with incongruous references, and the consort has an attendant write a reply allowing her sister to come to her. Tamakazura and the Omi lady, though both Tonochujo's long-lost daughters, could not be more different. This chapter clearly compares them to each other, and I can't help but feel badly for both of them. Our comparison of the translations begins with the title. Waley waxes poetic with a bed of carnations. Seidensticker uses wild carnations, which Washburn echoes with wild pinks. Tyler simply gives us pinks. No one is wrong. There are several words in Japanese and English that mean the same flower. Tokonatsu, gillyflower, carnation, pink, narishiko. I find it interesting that our two later translators go with pink and the earlier with carnation. Could it be that we've become more precise in our words as time has passed? This flower is usually pink in color, with 5 petals that have a frilled or serrated, almost tattered-looking edges. In our story, Tokonatsu refers to the lady of the evening faces, Yugao, and Narishiko to her daughter, Tamakazura. Most of our translation differences come in word choice, as has been common throughout. There are 2 kinds of fish that Genji's group are grilling and eating, and our translators mostly agree that they are ayu, sweetfish, and ishibushi, bullhead. During this picnic, we find an interesting difference, the ice water. Waley and Seidensticker call out wine and ice water, but Tyler explains that the ice water was to cool the chilled rice gruel they were eating. They weren't drinking ice water. As in many places around the world, the Japanese of the Heian court kept ice houses that provided cooling ice throughout the summer. While the men are enjoying their picnic, we're told of the sound of insects, specifically cicadas. Here we have a similarity. 3 of 4 translators call the sound of the insects oppressive, with Washburn being the outlier. While Genji is speaking of Tonochujo's daughter, He compares the girl to a bird lost from its flock. Waley calls this a sparrow, but everyone else refers to geese. I especially like Washburn's use of gosling to refer to the Omi lady. Well, you have to admit that it was greedy of your father to go looking for one gosling that had gone astray. Unnecessary, really, given his already enormous flock. I believe we have another insertion by Waley. After seeing how Tono Chujo brought in his other daughter, Genji believes he would accept Tamakazura and not treat her lightly. Waley adds that Genji thinks of introducing Tamakazura to her father, but not revealing who she really is until he sees her worth. I didn't find this sentiment in the other translations. Waley once again gets the wrong gender of a servant, saying a little boy took the message to the consort. All other translators use little girl, as would have been appropriate of the servant in Omi's service. There is a fascinating difference in the exclamations of the Omi lady and Gosechi while playing backgammon. Each translator uses something different. For Omi's part, we have, in order by year of translation, low, low, give her a deuce, keep it low, and come on, snake eyes. I'm not really sure which translation I like the most. I feel that Tyler, per usual, is closer to the original. Gosechi's exclamations have a similar coarseness to them, though our translators use different descriptors. The last difference I'll bring up is how the Omi lady's speech is described. All but Waley used speed as the detriment to her speech. Women were expected to speak slowly, in hushed tones. Waley says she screams everything she says. I doubt that very much. He does also use the word shrill at one point, which Washburn also uses along with high-pitched. For our seasonal references, we must rely on Tyler. In his relationship to previous chapters, he states that this chapter takes place in the 6th month. This is late summer, which explains why it was so very hot. As we move through the tale, there are frequently small quips or even diatribes by characters, typically male, regarding ladylike behavior. In this chapter, we learn not only that a lady should speak softly and slowly, she should also be familiar with many things, but never specialize in one thing so much that it makes her stand out. She must also always be alert and watchful, this in reference to keeping herself unseen and being on guard in case a man sneaks in. Lastly, for this chapter, Tono Chujo insists that ladies should never nap during the day. Languidness is not ladylike. We have a rare mention of hairstyle in this chapter. Hair worn long, parted in the middle, was the usual, with nuns cutting their hair shorter and possibly with bangs or a fringe. But here we learn that the Omi lady, according to Washburn, had her hair nicely done up, an updo. I wonder what that looked like. We have impressions of hairstyles for lots of eras and people, but I was unfamiliar with an updo for ladies during the Heian period. There's always more to learn. For clothing references, we have 3. First, Genji says to the young gentleman that it is a shame that they cannot even loosen their sashes while in service at court when it is so very hot. Second, the courtiers who are with Genji at the picnic. They're described as being in dress clothes and hard to tell apart in the twilight. Tyler has some insight. In a footnote, he says that the dress cloaks were violet, futai, in color, thus especially blending with the twilight. They were wearing noshi. I'm surprised that they are all the same color, as this garment allows for whatever color the person wants when not in service at court. However, I also know, thanks to Tyler's glossary, that in summer the noshi was frequently made of dark-colored sheer material. Speaking of sheer material, our third reference is to a woman's robe, specifically Kimono Kari's robe. She's described as wearing only a single sheer shift that her pale skin glowed through. Okay, yes, summer robes were sheer, and it was hot, so she was in just that, but what color was it? The text doesn't say, and I believe it doesn't because there's only one option, white. This shift is a hitoe, an unlined garment that typically serves as a base that all the other robes sit on top of. The hitoe essentially only comes in 3 colors, shiro, white, kurenai, red, and ao, blue-green. There are maybe 2 exceptions to that. From Dalby's chapter on color, we learn that Taishi, the empress whom the book of Kasune no Irome was made for, wrote in the margin that in the summer the hitoe must always be white. A white hitue was worn from essentially Memorial Day to Labor Day. That's late May to early September. Yes, it was considered uncouth to wear a white hitue after a certain date, just like the modern prohibition against wearing white shoes after Labor Day. That little coincidence always makes me smile when I think of it. I am finding the comments on how to properly behave as a Heian court lady very interesting. I can see where some of the modern expectations of ladylike behavior in Japan came from. In a book so focused on women, perhaps this is part of the point? Women could read this and sneer at the fact that it's mostly men making these comments, or use the advice to good effect. Probably a little of both for some ladies. What stood out for you in this chapter? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Join me next time for chapter 27, Kagaribi, Crescents. Subscribe if you'd like to explore the Heian period of Japan with me through the Tale of Genji.